you're going to clap. So I got you. Okay.
Ready?
Sorry. Yep.
We'll do it next week.
Okay, good.
That wasn't even a good one. Okay. Welcome to 10 Years Too Late, the podcast where we talk about a random subject and how 10 years makes a difference. I'm Joel Eschenbach, and I am, oh, by the way, we're 10 years apart. I'm 38.
I am Chase Briner. I am 28 this month. So
No, I'm Brett Watson, and I'm next month going to be 51.
Yeah, that's where the discrepancy comes in a little bit. We're not exactly 10 years apart. But the idea is that we pick a subject and kind of our difference in age and life experience is a jumping off point.
And we should probably say we've known each other for a very long time.
A very long time, yeah.
how long have you guys known each other?
Since, 95? Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, long time.
Mm-hmm.
Back when
I was like a freshman in high school or something like that.
back when you had hair.
When I had hair. Yeah, I didn't have it for very long.
He was the boy that everybody wanted to date
Yeah.
in our youth group.
Mostly girls, not other boys.
But
I mean, maybe.
Nobody would have
I don't
admitted it back then.
Yeah.
Wow. So 95. I don't remember when I met you. I was in
Fourth grade?
fourth grade. So I don't know what year that was.
I don't either.
It was a while. It was after you met him.
Yeah.
A while after you met
It
him.
was.
But yeah, and then I met you, Joel, had to have been
Maybe 2004, 2003, something like that.
So we've known each other for a while.
It's been a while. Yeah.
All
Yeah,
right.
Time flies.
What are we talking about today then?
I think we are going to talk about defining moments, the things in our lives
Ooh,
that
that's going to be good.
Yeah, that have kind of made a difference in terms of maybe shifted our perspective or our life path or helped us define who we are today. And who wants to start?
Brett?
No pressure.
You want to go, Brett?
I was just thinking in my head, I need some time.
That was like you were talking about the other week when somebody asks you a question and you say, what?
Yeah, it gives you a little bit of time to.
Yeah.
So
You're like, hey,
I just figured
you're up.
Brett
What?
has the most experience.
Yeah. A lot of defining moments. Okay, so I'll start. I actually had some defining moments just recently because we took a trip to Israel. And so while we were there, I'm a teaching pastor and also a
We won't hold that against you.
religion and cultural studies student. So it was really just at some points it was just overwhelming, the experience. And so I guess out of that whole experience where there were so many defining moments, the one that stands out the most for me is we visited an archaeological dig in the town of Magdala, which is that's the town where Mary of Magdala, or Mary Magdalene, as most people know her, is from. So I think it was only like a year and a half ago, they unearthed this town, and it was because a hotel was being built there, and that's what
Which is
so
always a
often
good reason
happens.
to unearth a town.
That's right. Well, they were digging for the foundation or something, you know.
Yeah.
And so a private organization came in, made a deal with the hotel company, and they dug up all these homes and so on around the village. And one of the things they found was the synagogue. And the thing that's really unique about this dig is it's a synagogue that had never been built over. So there are other synagogues that we found that Jesus taught in, like in Caesarea. But what's on top of that is a newer synagogue from the 4th century that a centurion built with his own money, to honor the spot where Jesus taught. So we're not actually looking at the stones that he touched. But in Magdala, that's not the case. And so I'm standing there on this site, and I have a picture of myself in the doorway of the synagogue. and I'm touching the stone there that he probably touched as he entered in there. He definitely taught in that synagogue. And it's hard to describe the feelings that I had. Just really surreal. And it kind of transported me to a time that is almost familiar because all my adult life I've been studying the Hebrew and Christian scriptures, and especially the life and the teachings of Jesus. And so it was just really a really profound moment for me.
So it kind of became real. The whole thing became real for you.
It did. It just changed, all of the mental images that I had in my mind, for these scenes that are described in the Gospels. They were totally different they were very different. The actual scenes were very different. And so that was really cool to see what it's actually like. But there's a weird familiarity anyway, just from studying it for so long. And are we allowed to say this? Having a relationship with God through Christ. I mean, that's how I
yes,
my
we're allowed to say
that. And so it was just really moving. So I felt very grateful to be there and to have that experience. Yeah.
That's very cool.
That's crazy. I tried to imagine when I heard you were gone, I was like, oh man, these are all the stories that we've talked about and we've listened to and growing up, and, just pretty much it would be hard to find a place in the world that hasn't heard the story of Jesus, and you were standing in a lot of those places. So I can imagine how I would feel. I'd be like trying to take everything in, but not being able to take enough in, that kind of, I don't want to miss a thing, but I know I'm probably going to, because there's so much detail over there, so much happened. But
oh yeah, we were constantly on the move. We saw so much in the course of 7 days that it's mind blowing.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
How has that affected your life back here, in your own community, in your own environment?
I'm definitely more contemplative or mindful than I was before I went. And I guess that has something to do, I didn't really analyze this, but I guess it has something to do with how much more real it all is.
Instead of just like a legend or a made up story.
Right.
And then the sense that there may be some things that have been added to those stories over the years, but the core of it is that at some point he walked there, he touched those things, interacted with those people.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
that I think it's in Luke 4. Jesus taught all around the Sea of Galilee, right? And there's all these towns, and you get to see how close they all are. It makes perfect sense that that's where he grew up. And so we went to Nazareth, where he actually grew up. And that scene in Matthew 4 where he's teaching in the synagogue of his hometown, and he reads from Isaiah 61, and he says, "This has been fulfilled in your hearing." And they're all like, "What? This is Joseph's kid, he's nuts."
Yeah.
And then he says, "Hey, Gentiles are accepted too," in so many words. The stories that he brings up to their in front of them, they realize that what he's saying is the Gentiles are accepted too, not just Jews. And they want to throw him off the precipice, it says in that passage. So in my mind, I had this picture of, a hill that's pretty high and maybe it's rocky underneath, and it would hurt really bad if they pushed him off. That's just what was in my head,
Ouch.
But good Lord, we're driving up, and our guide says, "That's the precipice." I was blown away. I mean, he definitely would have died if they'd have pushed him off of that thing. And we actually went up there, and there were all these families having barbecues and stuff in this park where the precipice exists. It had to be the place because there's nothing like it in the area. And so we're standing on the precipice that they were going to push him over, and looking out over. People don't even think about this. We're actually looking over the Valley of Jezreel, better known as the Valley of Armageddon. from this precipice that they were going to throw. It's just all so close. Everything that happens, it's all right around.
Well, which makes sense because they walked everywhere.
Yeah, right. They walked everywhere.
So it couldn't be like even here where, I mean, I don't know how much it was in relationship to like our town, but we get in cars and we drive.
Yes.
You know, so we can't, we'd be walking forever and ever.
Yeah.
So it's interesting I'm thinking about defining moments, and in some ways, Jesus is kind of the ultimate subject for defining moments, but also yours was a positive defining moment. Mm-hmm. But in my own life, I have those positive defining moments, but the things that have really changed me the most have been, quote, negative experiences or experiences of suffering, which is very applicable to Jesus as well. Yeah. It's literally how he, ended, so to speak. And so, like, when I think about that's for me, I don't know. When I think of defining moments, I mean, you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So my biggest one, I have so many positive ones, like, getting married to my awesome wife, who's like my best friend. I mean, all those, and my kids, and I could talk about all that. But if I had to look back and determine like one single defining moment for me that started to shift things from being basically like a kid to an adult, it was the fact that, I grew up in the church. I went into ministry early on and went to Bible college and became a youth pastor and a worship leader. And the long short of it is a few years in, I traveled around and served at different churches, but a few years in, I lived out in Colorado, and I I got married before that to someone I met in Bible college, and then we went through a pretty messy divorce while I was youth pastor at a church there in Colorado. And it was terrible. It was just one of those things where everything kind of was shown to the whole church. Everybody knew what was going on. It was awkward. It was weird. And then ultimately, I got fired. And I think I've told you guys this story. The sad story about this is that my ex-wife at the time had kind of left. She was also serving ministry, but she was done. She's like, I don't want to be here. And I was hanging in there on staff trying to work through it with the pastor and counseling and all that. But I didn't have a car because we were separated, and we had one vehicle. So I had gone to the dealership and bought a brand new Toyota Tacoma and drove it into the church office that day. And I was like so pumped about it because I hadn't had a car for a while, and I was like, I'm just going to do this. And I walk in, and that was the day I got fired.
I forgot about that, yeah.
And basically, I drove it. I had a meeting right away with the pastor, and super gracious pastor. I still to this day really respect him and the way he did it. He fought for me for a long time, but it was ultimately the denomination that said we can't have somebody who's going through a divorce be on staff. So it really wasn't even his call. And so ultimately he was like, I'm sorry you bought that truck. Was there any way you can take it back? Were we getting an Amber Alert?
I could have sworn I turned that off. I slid it the wrong way.
That's a defining moment right there. So the long short of it is that I just remember walking away from that moment. So leaving his office and walking down the hall and just it was just a defining moment. Like everything that I knew up to that point, I just knew that it was never going to be the same. I knew that my life was going to drastically change. And so thankfully I was able to go in the dealership. I hadn't signed all the final paperwork, so I actually was able to give the car back, which was really weird.
Did you have to walk back from the dealership?
No. Yeah, I had to walk.
Because at that point you had no friends.
I had no friends, no car. And there's more to that story. I literally went and lived in the desert for like 3 months with a friend. It was in this place called Pueblo, Colorado, which is, if you've ever been there, it's the desert. It's kind of away from the mountains, and there's tumbleweeds and coyotes and roadrunners. I mean, and literally
spiders.
Yeah. So that became like kind of a joke, is that it all kind of fell apart, and then I went and lived in the desert for months. But that really was that was the thing that shifted me and really broke down my ego. Obviously, really was the first experience. I had a few of them, but that broke my ego apart to the point where I was like, I had to go through suffering and and be exposed in front of people, and it was humiliating. So yeah, that's mic adjustments here. That's it for me. But there's tons of stuff, but that, if I had to point to one thing that shifted my path, that was the biggest thing, I think, in my adult life.
Gosh, I feel shallow about mine now.
No, yours was a positive one.
It was.
Because I think you can easily go negative with this.
Well, and I have a similar story.
Yeah.
But go ahead, Chase.
Yeah, you do.
Well, I think it's good that you did that one, because that's the most recent. So,
well, and also what I liked that you did that is, I think sometimes we think about defining moments as something like in the distant past. And you're saying we can continue to have defining moments.
I want to talk more about that as well.
Yeah.
Just how to take advantage of defining moments, because I feel like, well, I'll share one of mine first, but don't let me forget this.
Yeah.
I feel like when defining moments happen, sometimes we don't know what to do with them. Sometimes they happen, we're like, that's a good thing because it defines you. So it kind of, it puts you in a new direction, changes your perspective on life, which is good. And sometimes if you're expecting it, doesn't happen.
It's a great point, though, because you definitely, I'm more mindful, I'm more contemplative than I used to be as a young man. And so what you're saying is dead on correct. You can take advantage of the defining moments because you're more mindful of what's actually occurring, and you're more mindful of how you're feeling in those moments and what the possibilities might be because of those moments. For sure.
Yeah, I remember actually one of my defining moments in life was going to Romania. I actually was with you, Brett, and a few of my close friends and some people from the youth group that I was in. And at the time I've never been out. I barely remember leaving the state that I grew up in. So it was one of those moments where, okay, you're going across the country. I didn't even go to C camp in school. So I'm like, oh, wow, this is going to be nuts.
Going across the world.
Yeah, I'm going across the world,
Yeah.
And I remember being in Romania and being we were out in this village. I forget what village it was. It was out in the mountains. They had that ancient monastery. That
was actually a gypsy village.
Yeah. And it was out in the middle of nowhere, and these people are just like kind of just in shock at seeing this group of Americans.
Yeah, it was pretty remote.
Yeah, and so I remember being there on the top of this mountain as we walked up it, and me and a few friends, Chris, running the cameras, and then also a good friend of mine.
Hey, Chris.
Yeah. Also a good friend of mine, Ryan. And I remember that was like the moment where we're like, hey, we're going to be more than just youth group friends. We're going to start learning music and start performing. And that's kind of where I made a decision in my life where I was like, I think I want to do music for the rest of my life. I think that's what I want to go after. So that was a big moment. I had played guitar a little bit, but Ryan, Chris, and a friend of ours, they picked out of a hat which instrument they were going to play, and they still play those instruments.
Yeah, I was going to say, and you guys all still play all the time together.
Yeah, here and there.
Yeah.
And it's been a crazy thing to look back and say, okay, that's where I made the decision to like. I didn't know it because even going through high school, I'm like, what is my career going to be? What am I going to do with my life? But that moment right there kind of set the stage for what I'm doing today. So it was kind of crazy to experience. I guess that would be a huge defining moment.
That's a positive one too.
Yeah.
Apparently I'm the sad one.
Well, I have a lot of negatives.
We all do, yeah. Well, yeah, and back to what you're saying about taking advantage of that, because as you were talking, I was thinking in that moment, you took advantage of it.
Well,
you really did, because you picked out of a hat and you almost like recognized this is it makes me think of kind of the ancient traditions of like building an altar when moments happen. And that was like a way to take advantage of, talking about the biblical texts, when, especially in the Old Testament, like Jacob and
even
Abraham, and they would all build these like altars,
And they would use stone. They would stack stones because, stones endure. So,
Right. They'd still be there.
Mhm.
So they were taking advantage of that, right?
mhm. Yeah.
And you
You know what I did
that.
in Romania? Actually, we were at Dracula's castle at one of the moments, and I pulled one of the bricks out from the wall, and we put like a seed. I don't remember what it
We
was.
put a grape in there.
A grape. Yeah, we put a grape inside the wall, and we put those brick back. Like, I would be able to find that brick out of the thousands and thousands of bricks.
And the grape would be long decayed.
Yeah. So
You should have put like a little message in there.
yeah.
Yeah, we did that at the Wailing Wall.
Did you?
Yeah. I wrote a little prayer and
Put it in there.
put it in the wall.
Huh. That's pretty wild.
Hmm.
But if you take advantage and you talk about mindfulness, I was thinking, because you said about how you are older versus when you were younger,
Hmm.
and how you kind of rush through things versus being
Mhm.
more mindful. I can see that in our youngest child. She's 2 now, and she's our 5th. And I've just been able to really take the time to enjoy her. And I've enjoyed my other kids too. It's not like, but there's just a difference because in this phase of life, there's things you realize that how quickly they go. And it sounds so cliche, but it's true that I've been able to be way more mindful and just sit in the moment and just enjoy her instead of like, I mean, I'm still rushing all over the place, but in terms of her, I can stop and like make myself just slow down and take this in. So that's kind of what came to mind for me with, I don't know, being more mindful and
Yeah.
taking advantage of those moments.
There are so many advantages to being mindful. So many. So, the younger you are when you start that, better off you're going to be.
Nice.
What about the
I
fact
got
that
some insight now that I'm a little younger.
do.
yeah, now that you're younger, yeah.
Learn from your mistakes, Brett. That's what I'm doing.
Good.
Just kidding.
The thing that's hard to me about something like defining moments is you can't manufacture them. They happen when they happen. And, right? I mean, I suppose you could put yourself in situations.
Yeah. I think,
Well,
yeah. I mean, you don't
good-
manufacture them, but you definitely can. You can make mistakes that put you into those places. You know, like you were talking about your divorce. I was divorced. You were in the middle of all that when that happened to me, and you know, looking back on that, well, yeah, what led to that? Honestly, I married for all the wrong reasons. It was all about the expectations of others. And eventually that was going to fall apart, but as a young man, I just did what I thought everybody expected of me. And it just led to disastrous things, you know, definitely a defining moment for me. In my case, I was, do you want to hear this or?
Yeah. No.
I was a youth pastor, you're a youth pastor. And
It's like a trend. Basically just followed in your footsteps.
yeah,
Don't become a youth pastor.
Yeah.
Don't become a youth pastor.
Yeah.
I know. My sister hears this podcast. She's going to say that exactly. See what it led to? Your sin.
But there's more to the story,
Mhm.
which we'll go ahead.
I don't know what you mean by that, but
Well,
It's pretty much downhill from
just
here.
wait.
there is definitely more to the
it's a
story. I know that
cliffhanger.
much. So I'm a youth pastor. I'm kind of honestly the golden boy of the church. It was the up and coming church in that denomination in the area for sure, if not in the region. And so I had a pretty large youth group, and things were just rolling along great, except for in my marriage, which was not like a terrible, wasn't like a relationship where we fought all the time or anything like that. It was just more of a non-relationship. And so then what happened was I had a volunteer who became kind of my right-hand person, and she's my wife now. So we didn't have an affair, but we were accused of having an affair. So what happened is I had all these feelings for her, and I realized that I just couldn't do this anymore. So I was going to quit. And divorce was not even an option in my head, at least not while I was in ministry. So what I thought I'd do is I would quit at my ministry and then eventually get a divorce or try counseling again or whatever. I didn't know. So I announced that I was going to quit first to Arlene, and who's my wife. And she said, why? She was like blown away. And I just confessed to her at that point that, look, when I have something bad happen to me, the first person I think of to talk to is you. If I have something good that happens, the first person I want to talk to is you. And it's not right. And so I'm gonna quit. And she was actually going to quit as well. And she had said those things to me. And so she confessed having feelings for me. And both of us were shocked by that admission. We really were. Mm-hmm. And so then it just made things like, oh my God, what are we going to do now? So in order to keep things on the up and up, I went and I told the staff, who was the associate pastor.
And that's when everything blew up.
Oh man, yeah.
I remember that.
Yeah, and also someone who was my counselor, and rumors just flew from there.
And then ultimately, what did that do to you internally?
It just smashed my ego, just like you said. I was the golden boy. I was the guy that did no wrong. I was cool. I really was such an egomaniac. I remember struggling in my prayer life. Lord, I got such an ego. What do I do about this? I thought I'd be the greatest preacher ever. All these things. I could sing. It was ridiculous, and it just smashed that. I've always been, like I said, I want to meet people's expectations, and now I had just crushed everybody's expectations, and it just ate me alive.
Yeah,
it was horrible. Then of course, even worse, when I went and I confessed to my ex, she just went kind of nuts and understandably angry and all that, but it just was horrible. It was a horrible, messy thing. I think Christian radio at the time in our town, there was even a point at which the radio personality was asking for prayer for a young youth pastor in the area that was having an affair.
It was like broadcast.
Did not have an affair.
Right.
An emotional affair, I guess, of sorts, but we did not have an affair. But that was the rumor. And so just ruined me for ministry. And I ended up getting a job at Comcast Cable, and eventually Arlene and I got married.
But it's interesting to me. So, similar, different stories between us on that, but similar in terms of the breaking of the ego, the suffering. Mm-hmm. And I always come back to Jesus and saying, to take up your cross and follow me, that isn't the suffering really necessary? Richard Rohr said this, but it's not his thing. But the main two things that lead you to God are great love, a great suffering, and
he said three things.
Three things. There's a third thing.
And contemplation.
And contemplation. Right. Yeah, that's his.
Being mindful.
Being mindful. Mm. Yeah. It's true.
So true.
So, but then I think about ancient cultures and stuff that had, and follow me here real quickly, ancient cultures and stuff that had rituals that kind of forced that suffering upon young men specifically. Mm-hmm. And there's some arguments that, women already have sort of a built-in suffering with childbearing and having their period and all that.
What Paul meant when he brought that up.
Oh, okay. I never thought about that. So there was these rituals for men, for boys, and a lot of it had to do with this extreme kind of, maybe not extreme suffering, but in some ancient cultures, yes, extreme suffering, right? And
the Jews introduced it right away, like 8 days into being alive. You're circumcised.
With the circumcision, yeah. I remember hearing about
That's suffering.
a culture that they would do like the was that Native American? See, this is where I should have looked this up before I say it, but it's basically where they would hook guys' nipples and they would lean back and have to endure a certain amount of like tension on their nipples.
That would that's a defining moment for
That
sure.
is a defining, but the extreme suffering and pain that they had to endure, it just does something, and it almost unlocks something within you. But it's not like a shortcut. You can't just go, hey, today I'm going to go and I'm going to experience some suffering and some pain so that I can get to the next level. It doesn't work like that. Like you have to it's hard. But then you look back at that moment, right? And I look back at that moment and I say that completely changed my life in a good way.
In a lot of really good ways.
Ultimately.
Definitely.
My nipples hurt right now.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking about
I'm
it.
like that. It's just like it's like they put it like on a tree or something, and you have to lean back.
I'd have been that guy that ran away from the tribe.
Yeah, right. But that's one example. There's like tons of examples like that where there's these rituals. We don't really have rituals like that now in modern America. In good in some ways. I'm not saying we should
Yeah. We should reinstitute this nipple thing.
nipple thing.
No, I'm distracted now.
In Africa, they have one. I don't remember what tribe either, but they do like a kind of like a bungee jump, but the vines, so they're not elastic. They're vines, They jump off this high tower, and they do actually have some impact. So the vines are short enough that the impact isn't full, but they actually do hit the ground. Yeah. So that's part of their...
I would not.
But why would humans instinctively know that? Like that we need to put ourselves into some sort of place where we no longer can control something that's out
It
of
was
our
probably
control.
something we learned over time, who succeeded in life and why did they succeed, why were they stronger in the whole survival kind of, I guess, evolution of humanity, of like learning from each other. Okay, well, they did this and then that they did this and why is he on top? Okay, well, he hung from his nipples and he's tougher now,
Well, and it was
very
like
Jungian, by the way. That's
that's
and the reason that you feel that it's instinctive. You use that word, I think. Why do we instinctively know this? Is anyway, Jung would say that it's because of what he calls the collective consciousness of our species. So as we pass on our DNA one to the other, some of these, there's like repressed memory in the unconscious mind of, strength comes from suffering.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
You know what? As we're talking about kind of the negative moments in life that have been defining, you had mentioned that it kind of wrecked you, kind of really just kind of put you down in that moment, and I can relate to that. And I'm wondering, like, I remember reading Jordan Peterson's book, The 12 Rules for Life, and that first one was stand up straight with your
Shoulders back.
Yeah, because when you meet like defeat, or I guess I could even say a defining moment that was negative, that kind of it won, and you were the loser in that moment. It's remembering to take advantage of life, because before that, maybe it was your ego kind of kept you up. It was like you were succeeding in things, and a moment like that, it takes a long time before you actually stand back up and start being the Brett that you wanted to be. But so I'm wondering, because, all right, I'm probably going to face those moments more so, and I've already experienced my own, and it's how to get back up. What was the process of getting back up? How did you take advantage of that defining moment, even if it was negative?
How did I take advantage?
That's a good question.
In my case, I just cried a lot, and I was in counseling, and that helped a lot. A lot of prayer, a lot of meditation, thinking about what had occurred and really asking in my prayers, why did I allow this to happen? What was it in me? I discovered all kinds of things about myself doing that, and it was horrible. It just perpetuated the suffering. But somehow I knew, maybe it's the collective consciousness, I don't know, but somehow I knew that if I really wanted to be the me that Jesus would be if he were me, I needed to go through this, take up the cross and follow. So those were some of the practices that I had to do that.
Nice. And I guess there's a lot of, you start adding in new experiences, new moments, defining moments that would really lift you up. But
yeah, and when you're talking about kind of getting back up, I do think you get back up, but I think you get back up with a scar, or you get back up with
an important scar.
Yeah, and it never goes away. I think about this is a simple thing, but a few years back, I used to ride my bike to work. I did this for like 2 years. And it was about a 6-mile ride, and I rode on a busy street. Anyway, one day I turned my handlebars too quick, flipped over my bike, landed on these two fingers. Whoa. And dislocated both of them.
Oh my gosh.
Like all my body weight landed on these fingers. I don't know how I didn't break them, but they just got dislocated, and immediately they, swelled up. One of them was, looked like it was broken. I don't know. Anyway, but one of the scariest things is I actually flew in front of a car. So I flipped off the bike lane, off my bike, over the handlebars in front of a car that slammed on its brakes.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I have an experience like that too. What
the
crap, man?
I mean, I stopped riding my bike not long after that. We have
we have a single soul or something. Yeah. I don't know.
But obviously that was a defining moment in that I'm going to stop riding my bike because I could have just died. But also the thing I was getting at with that though is I had to do with the dislocation, I had to do physical therapy and everything because I couldn't even close my fingers. It was kind of ridiculous. I was like, this is just dislocated fingers. What's the problem? But to this day, every time I move my hand like this, I can feel those two fingers. And I've mostly restored range of motion. But yeah, it's just, that is the same way I think with suffering and defining moments and things in your life that
you need
that
to
are
have
hard.
That scar there.
You have that scar and you have that thing that you remember and it never really goes away.
It's like the standing stone in your life.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, in mythologies, Jesus is a great example of this, but you can see it throughout mythologies of different wisdom traditions. But, when Jesus reappears as the resurrected Christ, right? He still has all the wounds. That's the reason.
Yeah.
We need to remember.
Yeah, it is. And part of it is, I think, some of the death to that ego is you kind of have to, some of that has to die. And I think about so much of what I went through was connected to my ego. Same thing as you were saying is I wanted to be this person. I wanted to be this perfect. It was very similar, this perfect like leader and minister or, whatever it was. And God,
good
it hurts.
looking, you could sing.
God, it hurts to let that go.
What's it been like to lose your looks?
Yeah. Then I lost my hair. I really did lose all my hair about a year or two after that. It went.
Wow.
Yeah.
I wonder how much stress had to do with that.
I think a lot. I mean, it's also hereditary.
Yeah, right. But I wonder if it sped it up.
Yeah.
He's a good-looking bald man, though, isn't he?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I always say everybody says that. Everybody says, you have a great shaped head to be bald. I'm like, everybody says that to bald people. What else are you going to say? Your head looks like shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, but have you ever seen a guy that you're like, I don't know if his head is good for that bald look? I have seen some guys like that. I'm not going to mention because one guy's pretty famous.
Tim used to say, no, I don't look good bald. My mom pinched too hard when I was right at the end. So you got a great shape.
Yeah, thanks, man. I appreciate that.
So let me just tell my car story, almost having because this I wanted to ask you when you had that accident. Do you feel like that was a defining moment for making you aware of your mortality?
Yes. And I'm not going to live forever. I'm not going to.
I'm fragile.
I'm getting older, like I have a family, I have kids. I can't just be like, I'm going to ride my bike down a busy street every single day, both ways.
Oh, wait, this happened when you were an adult?
Yeah.
Oh, I missed that part.
This happened about 3 years ago. It wasn't that long ago.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't.
Because we went for a season with only one car, so I just rode my bike
Yeah, I remember
to work
that.
for
Okay.
a couple of years.
Wow.
And yeah, but it was though, because I would have been about 35. And it was the kind of that like, okay. And I would say now, and this is a whole nother subject, I would say between 35 and where I'm at 38 right now, mortality, and as I'm heading into 40, has been something that's really on my mind.
Yeah.
Really, really, really. And I feel like we could do a whole podcast about that, which is really another really just
Another pick me
happy,
up.
light subject to cover on 10 years too late. Doesn't everybody just want to listen to this podcast?
Even the name of the podcast.
It's too late.
This is great for me. I get to learn what not to do.
Yeah, that's right, man. You should.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so mine's not that similar then because it happened to me when I was a kid.
Okay.
My friend and I, John and I were going down to the hobby store because we were going to buy some D&D stuff and which is still a big part of my life.
You didn't really grow
Anyway,
out of that.
no.
Yeah.
Thanks to Chris. So we were down on this road called Nillis in town where I grew up, Fairfield, Ohio, and I started off into the street because I saw an opportunity to cross the street, right? It was a pretty busy street. And so an opportunity opened and I took off. But you know how on the shoulder of the road there's like gravel?
Yeah.
So I just slipped. I took off. I had no traction because of that gravel, and I fell face first onto the pavement, right? Well, I didn't think anything of the fall except that it was embarrassing, except then I heard this. And what had happened was we were right at the entrance from Nillis, the road, into the Kroger grocery store there, and someone was coming out to get onto the road, and he ran. If he hadn't stopped where he did, I was like 2 feet from. Put it this way: I turned over to see what the screeching noise was, and there was a tire in my face about maybe 2 feet away at best.
Wow.
Yeah, no exaggeration. And so got up, the husband was yelling at me, the wife was trying to calm him down, and after we knew everybody was okay.
Yeah, well, why is everybody yelling? Okay, that happened in my situation too. Some lady gets out of the car and goes, "What the hell are you doing?" I'm like, I didn't fucking mean to do this. God,
I just wanted to see if you'd stop in time,
bitch.
you know. Yeah. You know, I think that's just a fear reaction.
That was a defining moment in her life too.
You almost made me kill you, you know?
Yeah, right.
So-
like, oh yeah, I meant to flip over my handlebars, dislocate
Yeah.
my fingers, and land in front of your car.
Yeah.
Now, I
funny.
get it is a fear reaction.
My wife
but-
reacts that way to things. I remember Ryan one time, our son, like, leaped down as many stairs as he could at our apartment complex, and the momentum, he couldn't recover from the momentum, and he hit his head on the bumper of a car in the parking lot. And my wife went ballistic, just yelling at him.
Yeah, but that's a little different though, because he tried something really nuts.
Yes.
Like, that was like
Yeah, okay.
a
Yeah,
super
that's
risky
on it.
thing.
That's
I was just
true.
riding my bike.
Yeah, but you almost made me kill you. So,
Yeah,
I mean, that's-
right.
Anyway, I think that's
yeah,
what
sorry.
it is.
Yeah, no, I think
So,
you're right.
but I got up. We went to the hobby store. We bought some dice and stuff, and then I went the rest of my day not even thinking about it. And then that night, I began to just physically shake in my bed, and it all hit me like I almost ceased to exist. That was what was going through my mind. Like, what is that? What? I didn't know how to deal with it. So that was definitely a defining moment for
Yeah,
me.
for sure. Man.
Well,
When did you almost die?
oh man, there was a lot. You know why Ryan jumped
Yeah.
down those stairs?
That was Chase's idea, jumping down the stairs probably.
That was our parkour days.
Yeah.
I don't know if that was. I mean, that was probably. Was Ryan younger then? I don't know.
Yeah, he was younger when that happened. Yeah.
We got into parkour when we were in high school age. You know, like that was the cool thing to do. So looking back on it, jumping from building to building, that could have been bad. Yeah.
Did Ryan jump from building to building?
No, he watched from
See people doing that on
ground.
He was so
YouTube.
big then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was covered in sweat from head to toe. And so it's probably really good that we had some activity.
And that's why we let him do it. I mean, his mom worried about that every time you guys went out. But because he was so big, we knew that he couldn't do a lot of the same things that you guys could do.
Yeah.
But that he might try.
I've had my moments where I've like, wow, life is fragile. But I've also been first on scene to a lot of accidents for some reason, and helping in that way. And I'm like, whoa, this happens way too often for me to kind of go about life not thinking life isn't fragile. So
Yeah, and when you're young, you really do. Again, it's another cliche thing. You really do think you're indestructible. You really do think this is going to last forever.
yeah.
Yet you buy motorcycle after motorcycle.
Yeah. But I sell them.
And that makes Arlene mad too.
Well, in motorcycles too, it's like, where are you riding the motorcycles? I feel like.
Well,
If
it's
you're
just
on
like a
back
bicycle.
roads and stuff,
It's just like a
that's
bicycle,
true.
though.
That's a good point, though.
I mean,
Yeah.
I for sure wouldn't go down to a motorcycle being my transportation.
It just heightens the risk. Like, the more you do something, the more chance there is for you to...
You could be the safest driver. And same with the bicycle.
Same with a bike, yeah.
But it just takes one moment, and then you're staring at a tire.
I always remember when I rode my bike, someone said this to me. I was like, this is the best advice ever. Make sure if you're anywhere in proximity with a car, you're making eye contact with the driver. And I would just stare people down until they looked at me. Because so many people come out of a driveway or something, and they're not looking. They're just, wow. So if
this
they
was
don't...
always on your route to work?
Yeah.
So you must have had a bunch of people that were on that route all the time.
All the
and there was
time.
Like, there's
They're
that
like,
creepy guy, on the
guy
bike
staring
again.
at me.
That creepy bald guy on the bike.
Oh, man. Defining moments.
Defining moments.
Nice head, though.
I'm going to be thinking about this all day now.
My head will define your day.
Yes.
It already did.
Yeah.
It already did. I just didn't know if I should talk about it.
I can't not look at it now.
Well, Brett did say to me the other day, you're not greasy. Your head's not greasy at all.
Yeah.
I was like, man, it shines all the time.
No, it's just the right amount of shine.
The right amount of shine.
Well, thanks for tuning in. This was great.
It was, yeah.
Yeah.